Hello. I was not expecting this little lady for quite a while, but I'm very happy that she's turned up and I can now make her acquaintance. So, one of the things that I'm most impressed with, and I think we're really lucky for now over the last few years, has been the increase of smaller companies being able to do miniatures. And for the longest time, it was only the big boys. They didn't always play it safe, but there was definitely a option that they sort of took, which is a lot of the time it was a more sort of safe route. Now we're lucky. There's all sorts of miniatures being made by all sorts of companies. We really are in the promised land now, in a way, when it comes to the sheer amount of miniatures that we get to choose from. So one of these smaller companies, I wanted to get the pronunciation right, and I did a search online and found 3 different pronunciations, so that was awesome. Ouroboros Miniatures is what I'm going to go with. It's not a huge company. I'm not quite sure how long they've been around for, but they've done some really nice stuff. Most of the stuff seems to be from Kickstarters. This is the first miniature I've got from them, and I also did their Kickstarter for Second Skin, which I will do as a separate review because it warrants it. This is the female barbarian in 54mm, I believe it is. And the first thing that I was surprised with was the packaging. And a lot of time when you get these, I don't want to say an established company, because that's not true. It's more, not the big boys. You'll often just get them in a bag. This doesn't. This came in a hard plastic case that really did give the miniature some level of protection. The other thing I like, and a couple of companies are doing this now, and I think this is a much better idea. Instead of giving me a business card, which even if I intend to keep, I'm not gonna. It's going to sit on my desk, it's going to fall off, it's going to get mixed in with other things, it's just how that's going to happen. They're not. That's a sticker. And I think that's a great idea, because I can whack that on the side of my spray booth, or I can put it on the wall next to the paints, or anything, and it's going to sort of be there and stay in your consciousness. So I really like the idea of these stickers. Love the hard plastic case. Great idea. So taking it out of the case, it is in your traditional little plastic baggie. The sword was separate, and I believe looking at it later on that it was separate because that way hopefully it wouldn't get damaged. I think the idea was if you put it in with the bag with the bouncing around and that, it might actually get more damaged than that. So keeping it separate like it was, I think was really a protection thing. And the resin's a nice resin. It's not as brittle as some of the other miniatures I've got more recently, but the sword is thin. So it's probably the easiest thing on the entire miniature to damage, and you don't want it to break. Yeah, I think that's what it was. Just keeping it on the outside was really for that. Only 3 parts, and that's quite nice. There's got to be a reason why the leg was separate. I'm not entirely sure. I sort of understand the sword, why it was separate, like from a molding point of view. I'm not quite sure why the leg was separate. But there had to be a reason. They wouldn't just do it for whatever. But it's only 3 pieces, so there's not that much cleanup. There was a little on the sword, on the edge, and a little on the blade. And there was a connector where the resin is poured in on the bottom of the hilt that you can see. And on her... I think there was a little on her feet that needed cleaning up on like the actual main piece there. And there was a little bit of flash, but really not that much. And cleanup wasn't particularly, bad and didn't take that long. On the separate leg piece there's only the round tube underneath. The other piece is a rock, so you're not going to cut that off. So yeah, cleanup took maybe 15 minutes. That's basically the figure then after cleanup. The only thing I haven't cut off there is the tube underneath the rock, which is just where the resin comes in from. But it was, quick cleanup. The detail is beautiful. The figure itself is strong. You do see a lot of these sort of more paley, yellowy sort of resin, and they're really brittle. You got to be real careful with them. But this doesn't have that color, and it didn't have that consistency, so I'm not sure you still want to drop it on the floor, especially if you have a hard floor, but overall it was, I don't feel I have to be too tender around the figure, I'm not worrying about breaking it. Didn't take that long to go together. The leg went together brilliantly, like that took no time, and the super glue held it in place within 15 seconds, and it stood by itself, and it was great. The arm was a little bit more fiddly for some reason, and I don't think it was the figure's fault. It just, the super glue, which was Gorilla Glue, we always call it Gorilla Glue now, just wouldn't stick. It just wouldn't want to hold the arm in place, and it took maybe 10 minutes of mucking around before that damn stuff would actually hold the arm in place. Now it's rock solid, but yeah, for some reason it just didn't want to do it. I was at the point I was going to use the accelerator on it, which I don't always like using accelerant on the super glue if I can get away with it. And I was just about to, I let go of it to reach for the accelerant, and it stayed in place. So then I didn't touch anything, just let it there, and then when I came back in the afternoon, all was good. It doesn't come with a base. Now the figure does stand by itself, so that's cool. And it does give you a lot of options. You can, it does come with the rock. If you just want to paint her up and that, you totally can. I'd had this base sitting around for some time, and I'd tried a lot of different figures just sort of sitting on it. Everything from, I've had fantasy figures on it, and I've even had a Dalek sitting on it from the Doctor Who miniature game, just trying to see how it would look. And actually the Dalek didn't look too bad. The Dalek was actually the thing that was going to go on here if this didn't work. And I sort of put her on it just to see, and I really liked how it looked, and the base was big enough. Now, yes, so if anyone's going to point out, but that's a cannon shell, isn't it? Yes, it is, and I cut it off. Because overall I liked the look of it. I didn't need the cannon shell. That did have to be removed, so that came off. So there she is on it. It's a good size for the figure. The only thing I had to do, and this has nothing to do with the figure, this is partly my own fault, I could have done this but I didn't, was I probably should have sanded underneath the rock. The other foot's fine, it was the rock. And it's touching in the middle. There's enough actually touching the base, but I needed to probably just sand it down a little bit more. Not a particularly big deal, because I can do some filler and then just paint around it and that. But I like how she stands. I did pin her. There's only a small pin through the bottom of her main leg and then through the base, just to give it a little bit of extra support, and the rest is held down by super glue. That's just the filler. Just dries white, nice and hard, and it just fills in that gap. And I'm just going to paint then around that, and you're not going to notice it once it's all done. So I have a couple of little things to finish, a couple of RPG commissions that I've got going, and then I'm on to her. She is really cool. I really like her. This is primed. I primed her in white. I wasn't sure what colours I was going to do, and I'm still not. So I decided white was the most neutral of the two. It was either white or black. And black would work. Typically from a quick sort of job, you might go with black just because it'll give you darker, especially if you're doing darker colours. If I was going to do darker colours, the black might have been a way to go. Sort of helps you with your shadows and just dark colours in general. But I went with white because I just wasn't sure. And if I was going to do dark colours, they still work. They still work over white fine. It's just, slightly different, but it still works fine. I was sort of thinking and deciding upon a more lighter sort of paint scheme. I'm not sure yet what colour to do her armour. I thought about, typical silver and that, but I'm thinking maybe not. Maybe make the armour a different colour. And same with the coat. Because the thing is, normally you want one thing to be the main focal point. When you first look at a figure, what is it you want to look at? And then you usually, after you look at the first thing, you start looking at the rest of it, noticing all these different things. Now, the one thing about this figure is there's actually a few things that can capture your attention first. In 54mm, that's really good. Like in 28 should still be a cool fig, but in 54, the detail on that's really, really solid and it's really good. So, you've got the face, which is, in figures usually, the face is often the focal point because of what it is. That's where the life is, the face, the eyes, and all that sort of stuff. So the face is definitely a very strong possibility. My friends jokingly have said her breasts, and that is true as well, but I'm not going to do that. Her sword, being the sheer size that it is, can certainly be a focal point. And I'm tempted to do that. I'm tempted to do some stuff with the sword and possibly bring your attention to it first and then move to her. But the only thing with doing that is really the life of that miniature is the barbarian, not the blade. Is a completely valid and fair choice anytime anyone does go with a sword or something like that, but in a way going with the inorganic object as the focal point on a figure is maybe not always the best thing. It's totally choice, of course, but then I thought maybe the cloak. The thing with that is it's the same sort of problem with doing the sword, but really that cloak is amazing from behind. I mean, it's cool from the front, but it's amazing from behind. So you're not going to be looking at the back of the figure as much as you will be the front. So in the end, I decided I think I'm going to do the face and the hair. I was actually mucking around with the green, with a different figure, and I really liked how the hair turned out. So I think I might go with the green for her hair, just to be different, because I've done a lot of black and red and blondes. So something completely different. But the other thing I was sort of toying with was, originally I was going to do a brown for the cloak, because that made sense. But then I started thinking, well, maybe you can have some fun in other areas with it. Maybe not do brown like it was a bear or something like that, but I'm sort of looking at maybe blue, trying to look at maybe the edge of a tundra where there's more snow and ice. For some reason they don't feel the cold, because she's she's wrapped up with the cloak, but obviously nothing else. So yeah, some people might say, but what about that? But overall, I was thinking, maybe play around with that colour a bit. Instead of doing the brown, go with the blue. Like she's felled some snow beast and it's got a more bluey sort of hide or something like that. So I'm going to sort of do some experimentation though before jumping in. But overall, this is a fantastic figure. I'm really impressed with it. I just love the detail. It's got a lot of character, which is what you want when you're going to do a figure. You want it to have personality. You don't want it just to be this thing. You want it to have personality, and you want personality that's going to come off the figure, especially when you start painting it. If it has personality before you paint it, then you should only be able to add to it. So I'm really looking forward to getting around to starting her, which is going to be soon. And if you were wondering about trying them, I totally recommend this company and the figures they've done. I will be having a look at Second Skin, which is a bust, science fiction bust. And it's great too. I was really impressed when I looked at it, and it's nice. Both of these figures I bought for RPG use, because a lot of the time when I'm GMing, I'm thinking of characters and I'm thinking of stories and I'm playing around with the adventures and all this sort of stuff. So miniatures sometimes give me a very good sort of grounding on ideas and what I can do. And sometimes it's the miniature that can fuel that story, or there might be a character in there that's just not working for me, but you see the miniature, not necessarily the miniature for that game, but you just see a miniature that sort of would fit, and then everything sort of clicks and you sort of know how to handle that situation and that. So that's really what I do. So both of the ones I bought were for, this one was for D&D, and the other one was going to be used in Starfinder, which is the new one from Paizo. And yeah, I was just wrapped. I mean, she's too big for the standard size, which is 28mm, but I'm actually not worried about that. I'm just going to... I tend to use my figures more as sort of visual aids rather than counting the hexes and all that sort of stuff. So I tend to also love full figures over busts. That's just a personal thing. I know some people absolutely love busts, and you should. If that's your gig, you should totally love them. I was really impressed with Second Skin. I've bought 2 busts recently, her and one other. And I'm enjoying the busts, but I have to admit I love them in full figures. And I certainly would love to see more of their figures that they've done in their Kickstarters as full figures in 54mm, just because that fuels my passion. But absolutely recommend this company. The communication's been great with the staff. The quality of the miniatures has been great. The turnaround on shipping was pretty damn quick, and they're not excessively expensive in any way. And what more can you want from a company? So totally recommended. I'll put the links for their Kickstarters and that. They've all ended now, but you can still check them out and contact them. And the Facebook, the best way to contact them at the moment has been Facebook. They do have a page, but it looks like the page is still being built. So I'll put the Facebook and that in the description.